Imagine a world where ambition collides with morality and the pursuit of success tests the limits of humanity. In this world full of aspiring achievers, a gripping drama unfolds. Some, armed with integrity and hard work, steadfastly follow their principles. Others, on the contrary, do not shy away from lies and manipulation, ruthlessly trampling on all who stand in their way. And here is the paradox. It is these unscrupulous individuals who often find themselves at the pinnacle of success. Why does the world seem to favor the worst representatives of humanity? It is enough to look at history, politics, or business to see many examples when people, devoid of moral guidelines, achieved incredible power. From the cruel emperors of antiquity to the heartless corporate executives of today, this pattern repeats itself time after time. But is it just a coincidence? Or is there something more to it, a fundamental feature of human nature, deeply rooted in our evolutionary psychology and social structures? In a world where resources are limited, competition becomes inevitable. In this struggle, those who show hesitation, who seek justice at every turn, are often left behind. At the same time, those who are willing to exploit, deceive, and dominate make their way to the top. This harsh reality begs the uncomfortable question: is morality a weakness in a brutal game of power? And to find the answer requires a deep dive into the study of human nature and the social mechanisms that define our world. Yet paradoxically, despite the frequent short-lived triumphs of the less worthy representatives of humanity, the annals of history are replete with examples of their crushing downfall. A legitimate question arises, not only about the reasons for their rise to the top, but also about the durability of their success. And perhaps most importantly, what significance does this have for those who are not prepared to compromise their moral foundations? N, a profound thinker, viewed power as an undeniable driving force of life, as a phenomenon devoid of inherently positive or negative coloring, as the very essence of existence. In order to penetrate into the mystery of prosperity of the worst, it is necessary, first of all, to comprehend the nature of power as such. And here we inevitably encounter one of the most debatable postulates of N, the dichotomy of the morality of masters and the morality of slaves. Let me go deeper into this question. Let us imagine two warriors in mortal combat on the battlefield. One of them is the embodiment of strength, determination, and fearlessness. He does not hesitate to take what he needs, forges the world as he sees fit, without needing anyone's approval. The other is full of doubts, constantly looking for confirmation of his actions from the outside, thirsts for justice, and naively believes that the world will reward him for his virtue. Which of these two is likely to emerge victorious from this battle for survival? In the historical annals of humanity, the question of who rises to the pinnacle of power has long occupied the minds of thinkers and strategists. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, offered a radical view of this question, arguing that morality is not an immutable truth, but rather a product of the shifting power struggles that unfold throughout history. In his view, there are two fundamental systems of morality: the morality of masters and the morality of slaves. These concepts are not merely abstract philosophical constructs. In Nietzsche's view, they explain why people unencumbered by moral principles often reach the heights of power, while those who prioritize goodness and justice have to struggle to survive. The morality of lords is the ethical code of the strong, the powerful, the conquerors. It is based on values such as fortitude, courage, ambition, and the pursuit of power. What is good for the Lord is what strengthens his ability to dominate, create, and assert his will in the world. He does not need outside approval. He determines his own worth. The dominant takes full responsibility for his destiny and does not see weakness as something to be guarded. Weakness is merely an obstacle to be overcome. The morality of slaves, on the other hand, is the morality of the oppressed, the powerless, those who have no way to directly impose their will. Instead of glorifying power, it elevates meekness, submission, and self-sacrifice to a pedestal. It proclaims that suffering is a virtue and that positions of power are by definition evil. N interpreted this as a moral system skillfully created by those who are deprived of the ability to dominate, as a psychological adaptation mechanism that allows them to survive in a world ruled by the powerful. Yet here it is, the inconvenient truth. Slave morality not only fails to prevent the ascendancy of the ruthless, it actively promotes it. By anathematizing ambition and dishonoring the pursuit of power, it leaves the reins of power in the hands of those who are utterly indifferent to moral principles. While noble souls remain in indecision, those who profess the morality of lords do not hesitate to seize power. In a world where indecision is tantamount to defeat, the consequences of this state of affairs are inevitable. What does this mean for us? Are we to reject all morality and embrace the ruthless path without reserve? Or is there another way to reconcile force and virtue? To find an answer to this question, it is necessary to penetrate deeper into the psychology of those who come to power, those who refuse to be passive victims of circumstances. Imagine the vast expanse of the wilderness, where its harsh laws reign. Here, survival is not a matter of justice or mercy, but rather the result of brute force, the ability to adapt to changing conditions and the willingness to go to any lengths. A lion does not ask permission before he starts hunting, and a hurricane does not apologize for the destruction caused. Nature is indifferent to moral principles. It favors only those who can withstand, who can dominate. Human society, in fact, has not strayed far from these primitive realities. Even under the cover of laws and social agreements, the eternal struggle for survival continues to rage. Those who reach the pinnacle of power often have one thing in common: unrelenting determination. It is not necessarily about brutality per se, but rather about the ability to act quickly and effectively without being burdened by doubts or remorse. This is not an accident, but a natural result of evolutionary adaptation, a mechanism that has allowed individuals and entire empires to seize and hold power in a world that does not tolerate indecision. For decades, psychologists have been studying the qualities that predict success in a highly competitive environment. Time and again, researchers have come across the same patterns: high levels of ambition, reduced susceptibility to fear, and perhaps most controversially, a diminished sense of empathy for those who stand in the way of the goal. One should not jump to the conclusion that all those who have reached the pinnacles of power are psychopaths, but it cannot be denied that many of them exhibit characteristics that allow them to act without being burdened by the emotional considerations that hold ordinary people back. It is enough to recall the pleiad of leaders, entrepreneurs, and conquerors who have left an indelible mark on history, from Julius Caesar to modern business sharks. The trend is obvious. Indecision becomes a burden, and power is not given but taken by force. Willful people do not wait for a sign from above to assume the role of leader. They boldly go forward, take risks, and deal with the consequences as they come. This is why the ruthless often find themselves at the top, while the indecisive remain in the shadows of obscurity. However, herein lies the paradox. Ruthlessness alone is not enough to hold power. Those who have power but lack wisdom often experience dizzying falls. The very qualities that help them rise to the top can be the cause of their demise. A leader who rules based solely on fear will eventually be consumed by the very forces he once held in check. History is full of examples of tyrants who naively believed they were invincible until they faced imminent collapse. Whether the seizure of power by ruthless individuals means an imminent collapse of morality and justice deserves careful consideration. To say so would be a simplification of a complex world where good and evil, hope and despair are intertwined. In order to make sense of this, it is necessary to question the widespread but perhaps misguided belief in the justice of the universe. From an early age, humans are lulled with tales of a just world where virtue is rewarded and evil is punished. These stories, reinforced by religious dogma and philosophical teachings, form a belief in the inevitable triumph of justice. But facing reality often leads to painful disappointment. Hard work does not always guarantee wealth. Honesty does not always lead to leadership, and good hearts are often broken. This dissonance is not a defect of the system, but rather an inherent part of it. The notion of justice is largely a product of social construction, a narrative designed to maintain order and stability rather than reflect objective reality. It is a comforting, but still an illusion. Power and success are not automatic rewards for merit. They require struggle, skill at the game, and often ruthlessness. Psychological science has discovered an interesting phenomenon known as the just world delusion. It is expressed in the persistent belief that life is fundamentally organized according to the principle of justice, where everyone gets what he or she deserves. However, research shows that such a belief is seriously dangerous, as it promotes passivity and inaction. Indeed, if a person is inclined to believe that virtue alone is sufficient for success, he or she risks losing sight of the harsh realities of competition, the need to strategize, and the importance of power. While the naive, just world advocate waits for a miracle, the more pragmatic and illusionless are actively pursuing advancement using all available means. This raises a legitimate question. Does this mean that moral principles are completely meaningless? Should we abandon any beliefs and values in the relentless pursuit of power? Of course not. True wisdom lies in understanding the rules of the game without becoming blind and obedient to them. As life shows, the greatest suffering falls on those who naively believe that kindness alone is enough to achieve what they want. However, those who find the strength to balance honesty and integrity with strategic thinking, who skillfully combine kindness with strength, are able not only to succeed, but also to change the existing rules of the game. The truth is that justice is not a given that should be passively expected. It is something that has to be created with one's own hands, by making efforts and using all available resources, including power. The philosopher saw this confrontation as an inherent feature of being human. His response was not to succumb to the deceptive appearance of justice or become an unfeeling tyrant. Instead, he emphasized a more meaningful aspect, the possibility of overcoming both weakness and cruelty. To comprehend this concept, it is necessary to delve into one of his most innovative ideas, the concept of Übermensch, the individual who rises above the bounds of morality, above delusions, and above limitations. Let us imagine a situation. A man is on the edge of a bottomless abyss. Behind is the world as it is, filled with injustice, barriers, and the oppressive burden of conventional norms. Ahead lies the unknown, a road that only the brave dare to embark on. Most will probably hesitate, paralyzed by fear and doubt. Some, however, will dare to jump. These are the Übermensch, individuals who transcend the ordinary, charting their own course and redefining the concept of power on the basis of their own principles. Friedrich N's idea of the superhuman is not about a demonstration of brute force or a blind quest for dominance, but about self-improvement and self-overcoming. A superhuman is a person who resolutely rejects the role of a passive victim of circumstances and does not blindly accept the generally accepted moral foundations, but independently determines his life path. Instead of mindlessly conforming to the expectations of others, the Superman shapes his own destiny based on his inner convictions and values. At the heart of the superhuman concept is the will to power, is a powerful driving force for self-realization and transformation of the world. Unlike passive morality, based on submission and guilt, the will to power implies acceptance of one's deepest instincts, striving for creativity and filling the meaningless world with one's own meaning. It is not a matter of striving to dominate others, but of self-control and management of one's own life. While weak people are constrained by fear and societal prejudices, the superhuman moves forward, freed from illusions and prejudices. It is important to note that the superhuman is not a ruthless and cruel being. Unlike tyrants and manipulators who seek power because of their own insecurities, the superhuman does not need validation of his importance. His power comes from within, from the realization of his own value and independence. The Superman does not resort to deception or oppression because his power is self-sufficient and does not depend on external approval or fleeting success. This is why even the most amoral individuals who reach the pinnacles of power can never truly become superhumans. Their power is based on external factors, while the power of the superhuman is based on internal factors. In a harsh world dominated by self-interest, the age-old confrontation of two strategies unfolds: the temporal and the infinite game. Ruthless players, driven by the thirst for power and profit, seek immediate results, not shying away from manipulation and forceful methods. However, there is another category of people, superhumans, who think big and far-sighted. They do not strive for fleeting victories, but devote themselves to creating something greater than themselves, leaving a trace in history. How can an ordinary person striving for high ideals navigate a world where ruthlessness seems to be a path to a successful future? How not to be tempted to overstep moral principles in order to achieve what you want? The answer lies in rethinking the concept of power. Instead of seeing it as a weapon to suppress others, it should be seen as a tool for creation and the achievement of noble goals. Imagine a situation. You are participating in a complex game where the rules are set by those who are ready to do anything to win. In such a world, indecision and naive belief in justice doom you to defeat. Ruthless players, realizing this, shamelessly take what they want. But do you have to be like them to survive? Not at all. A common mistake is that most people see only two alternatives: to be a ruthless predator or to become a defenseless victim. However, there is a third way that requires wisdom, resilience, and the ability to use power for good. There is, however, an alternative approach that skillfully combines strategic planning with unwavering integrity. This path allows an individual to compete effectively without compromising his moral principles and maintaining inner harmony. Nietzsche's philosophy does not call for the mindless pursuit of domination, but rather emphasizes overcoming personal weaknesses while maintaining one's own authenticity. The overriding principle is to deeply understand the nature of power without allowing oneself to be enslaved by it. One of the most significant flaws inherent in human nature is the naive belief that life should be fair and equitable for all. However, the reality is that fairness is not an inherent attribute of existence. The strongest and most successful competitors realize this fact early in their development. Instead of wasting precious time and energy on fruitless complaints about injustice, they carefully learn the rules of the game and skillfully use them to their advantage. This does not mean abandoning ethical standards and moral principles. Rather, it implies recognizing that power is inherently neutral and devoid of any moral evaluations. Those who have a deep understanding of its mechanisms and principles of action have a better chance to manage it effectively. Many people fail in achieving their goals, mistakenly believing that mere kindness and decency will be enough to achieve success. However, it should be remembered that power is rarely given voluntarily. Most often, it has to be won. This does not mean that it is necessary to become cruel and unscrupulous, but it implies a deep understanding of the psychology of those who seek to use you for their own purposes. Strategic empathy is a comprehensive comprehension of human nature, the ability to unravel the hidden motives and anticipate the coming steps of others. This quality allows you to confidently maneuver in a world of deception and manipulation, while remaining true to your principles. Most people are subject to the influence of fears: fear of failure, fear of being rejected by society, fear of loneliness. However, a strong personality cultivates an inner resilience. This implies readiness for discomfort, courage to take risks and pave their own way despite obstacles and resistance. Truly successful people do not wait for someone else's permission. They themselves create favorable opportunities where others do not see them. It is important to distinguish between mindless cruelty and mind-controlled cruelty. The former is destruction for the sake of destruction, while the latter is the ability to make difficult decisions without the slightest hesitation. Power sometimes requires the ability to break toxic relationships in time, the courage to make unpopular decisions, and the courage to face unpleasant truths. It is not a display of cruelty, but a demonstration of inner strength. The key is to understand when and how to apply that strength. Violent people often fly high, but their fall is usually swift and painful. The reason for this is that their domination is based on exploitation rather than creativity. The true Übermensch, as Nietzsche taught, is a builder, whether in the realm of business, an innovative idea, a social movement, or personal evolution. When an individual creates real value, he becomes an indispensable element of the system. He does not need to resort to manipulation, because his influence is the result of merit, not the appropriation of another's. A legitimate question arises: is it possible to succeed in a world where ruthlessness is rewarded? The answer is unambiguous. Yes, it is quite possible. However, to do so, one must abandon the outdated rules of the game, Stop naively expecting justice and begin to master the art of power on one's own terms. This leads to a fundamental question. Is power itself the embodiment of evil, or is its nature simply misinterpreted? Power is a driving force that shapes the course of history, influencing the destinies of both those who wield it and those under its influence. But does power carry an inherently negative charge? Nietzsche's philosophical explorations of power go far beyond the concept of mere domination. They concern creation and self-overcoming. The pursuit of power, according to Nietzsche, is often misunderstood. It is not a question of suppressing others, but of transcending one's own possibilities, overcoming the limitations of the present moment, and becoming something more than one can imagine. Throughout the centuries, the history of power has been invariably intertwined with corruption. Countless rulers, once at the top, find themselves at the mercy of exorbitant selfishness, greed, and despotism. This paradox begs the question, is power itself a source of evil, or does it merely bring to the surface the most unsightly traits of human nature? N argued that true power lies not in harming others, but in overcoming one's own limitations, in the pursuit of greatness and the creation of new values that are not constrained by generally accepted moral norms. However, public morality is often prejudiced against power, seeing it as a source of decay. In a world where virtue has been elevated to a cult, a person who aspires to power unwittingly arouses suspicion. But what if this is just a delusion? What if by rejecting conventional moral principles and creating his own rules, he is simply showing the true nature of life, unbridled, unfiltered, and uncompromising? N viewed the will to power not as a simple desire to dominate others, but as an inner strength, a desire for a more fulfilling life, for unleashing one's full potential. In this context, the desire for power appears as a moral imperative, as a challenge to the individual to break free from the shackles of social institutions and to determine the trajectory of his or her existence. However, a reasonable question arises. Does this mean that everyone who craves power automatically becomes a bearer of virtue? The answer is ambiguous. The path to power is like a double-edged blade that can lead to both spiritual enlightenment and total collapse. The key factor that determines the outcome is intention. Is the quest for power a desire to impose one's will on others, or is it a process of self-improvement, creating a reality that meets the highest aspirations? So, is power an absolute evil? Not at all. In its essence, it is just a tool, which in the hands of a person with pure thoughts can lead to unimaginable greatness. However, when power is used for selfish purposes, to oppress and suppress others, it reveals the darkest aspects of human nature. The challenge for each of us is to redefine power, seeing it not as a source of fear, but as an opportunity for self-actualization that requires discipline, inner strength, and an unwavering commitment to be better than we are today. If the presented study of the phenomenon of power and success has made the reader think, questioned established beliefs, and awakened an unquenchable desire to learn the depths of life and philosophy, then he should definitely join the channel Mirror of Being. Let him not forget to express his gratitude by clicking the approve button and share this revelation with those who are eager to hear the truth. With daily content updates, together we can continue the exciting journey to comprehending truth, personal growth, and striving for a more fulfilling and influential life.